In the previous video, I showed you a graph of 1 over x squared, and it looks like this. In this video, we're going to try and understand why this graph looks the way it does. Because if you look at the graph of 1 over x, it will look something like this. It will look like something like this. Now a graph of 1 over x squared looks like this. Okay, so we're going to try and understand why it looks the way it does. So now if you look at this here, hang on. Well, let's look at when x equals 1. When x equals 1, if you try and put 1 into here, it will be 1 over 1. And then if you try and put 1 into here, it will be 1 over 1, sorry, here. So which is 1 and 1. So that's where the two will cross right here. So this here is 1. By the way, the blue line here is 1 over x, and the red line here is 1 over x squared. Now let's look what happens when you increase x. So as x increases, that means these values are increasing. So look what happens. Let's say if you look at the number 2 now. Okay, so put 2 into here. So x squared will look like this: 1 over 4. Now put 2 into here, it will be a half. You see, this here, a half, is bigger than this here. So that's why a half is here, and this bit here is going to be a quarter. So as x increases, meaning as these numbers increase, so let's say 10 here. If you look at this, put 10 into this bit here, it will be 1 over 100, 100, and then put 10 into here, it will be 1 over 10. So you see, this number here is bigger than this. That's why as x increases, the blue line is always above the red line. So your 1 over x is above the 1 over x squared. Okay. Now look what happens when it's less than 1. So 1 is here. Let's say 0.5. Okay. Let's say 0.5. Well, let's just use a half. Okay. Let's put a half into this thing here. So you will have 1 over, I'm going to do it like this. So you've got one number, the number 1 divided by another number. And here, and then you square it. Okay. And then for this one here, when you put a half into there, it will look like this. So now, to try and, when you've got a fraction within a fraction, try to visualize it as this: 1 divided by, because that's what's happening. 1 here divided by a half. 1 divided by a half would be this. Now turn this into a fraction, so it's going to be like this. And then well, whenever you divide a fraction, well, you always times the reciprocal of this. So really, this here becomes 2, because top times top, bottom times bottom. So it's really 2 over 1. So this whole thing here is actually 2. Okay. Now looking at this bit here, you've got a number 1 divided by this thing here. Okay. Now a half divided by, well, a half squared first. A half squared is a half times a half. So that's a quarter. So this bit here will be 1 over 1 divided by a quarter. Okay. And then, well, again, if you visualize it as 1 divided by a quarter here, well then you, well, 1 over 1 times the reciprocal of this, so this will be 4. You see, this here, this whole thing here will be 4. This here will be 2, meaning that when it's less than 0, you see the red line will always be bigger than the blue line, because looking at this here, because here you've got divided by a quarter, which 1 divided by a quarter, which will be 4. Here you've got 1 divided by half, which will be 2. You see, the red line will always be bigger than the blue line when x is less than 1. And look what happens when you're on the negative side now. So let's just look at the red line. When x is negative, you see, when x is negative, this thing here will be positive. So if you look at negative 2, that would be like well, if you put negative 2 into here, it's really 1 over 4. You see, if you put negative 2 into here, it will be 1 over negative 2, which is well, we can move it up here, and then we can take it out here. Okay, so this is really minus a half. This is a quarter. You see, the negative, because of this squared here, it cancels out the negative. So the answer will always be a positive. Whereas if you look at just this here, the negative plays its part in this one here, because it doesn't get cancelled out by well, if you put negative into here, it will get cancelled out because of this squared here. That's why you never see the negative playing its part when you come to look at this graph here. That's why when x is negative, the red line is always above 0. Okay, it's always up here because it's always above 0 because the negative doesn't play its part because of this bit here. Whereas this one here, the negative will play its part. That's why it's forcing the blue line into the negative realm. Okay, it's forcing the blue line down there. Okay, so that's why 1 over x, 1 over x squared looks like the way it does. Okay.